Bella Salon and Day Spa, located at 41 West Main Street in Northeast Pennsylvania, proudly supports Chautauqua Sunrise and its volunteers. More information at bellasalonanddayspa.net. Funding is provided by a grant from New York State Senator Catherine M. Young, representing Western New York's 57th District with a local office in Olean. Chautauqua Sunrise is made possible by a grant from Fredonia Place, a continuing care retirement community providing dignity in a modern luxury environment. From the Access Channel 5 studios in Mayville, it's Chautauqua Sunrise. Chautauqua Sunrise is hosted by Doc Hamels and supported by the award-winning volunteers at Access Channel 5. Continuing the traditions of Senior Report, we are here to share local news, colorful interviews, and events of interest to everyone. Chautauqua Sunrise is broadcast live Saturday mornings each week, countywide, from 9 to 10 a.m. Join us by calling in live, emailing us, or checking out our social media. And now, from the Channel 5 studios, it's Chautauqua Sunrise.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Chautauqua Sunrise. I'm Doc Hamels, and we got a great show for you coming up here in a little bit. But as always, I got things to share and talk about with you before we get started. So grab that morning coffee or hot chocolate because you're going to need it this morning. It's only about 10 degrees out there. Hey, Mayville, what the heck? I came from the sunny west of Ripley, and you guys got about 2 or 3 times the amount of snow than we do over there. It's unbelievable. Well, snow is part of our lives here, and there's a lot of fun things to do during the winter time. And if you're sitting at home grousing that you got cabin fever, get opening the newspaper or the media or Facebook. There's events all over the county. There's ice festivals, there's winter festivals, there's winter concerts, there's sledding. They still got the sled rides over at Chautauqua Institution. Yep, I get my inside scoop here. There's things at the Grape Discovery Center. I know they're having things from time to time. There's things just everywhere. Coming up in the middle of February, you got the Ice Festival. And I don't know if they're going to have an ice castle this year, depending on a thumbs up. He's giving me a thumbs up. That's if there isn't a castle, you can call the station and talk to Randy Burt. He just gave me without any doubt that there will be a castle this year. That's his call. I don't know about these things, but anyways, it's a lot of fun. And if you do go there, you have to pay for parking if you park there. And my Rotary Club, the Westfield Mayville Rotary Club, does the parking. And all that money is split up among various organizations, including our Rotary Club, that goes to help support community projects. So your money isn't just going into this big void. It's helping pay for the festival and also going to some really good causes. So that's coming up. So get out there and have some fun. A lot of good things going on over there coming up February 14 and 15. Okay, let's see what other things we have in ways of announcements. Our good friend Mary Ann Spanos from the Office of the Aging sent me an email not too long ago and announcing that there will be a mental health substance abuse community resource training February 26th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Over at the Park United Methodist Church. And they'll be discussing community resources available for individuals with mental illness, substance abuse, addictions, and crisis services and so forth in their families. So check that out. If you have any questions, give the Office of the Aging a call and they can tell you more on that. And according to this, where did I just see that? Refreshments will be served at that point. Okay, also a couple things to keep in mind coming up. I know it's a little early, but I like to announce these because we have them available for you, and you can mark your calendars. If you like pancakes, March 7th coming up over Chautauqua Suites from 7:30 to 11 a.m. The Cub Scout Pack 126, they were here not too long ago visiting, having an all-you-can-eat pancake breakfast, and tickets are $5 a person. That's coming up on March 7th. Also, we have a slide on this one. I have a community challenge for folks in the Westfield, Mayville, Brockton, Ripley area. On March 4th, we got a slide from our friends at the Child Advocacy Program. Jeff, if you want to pop that one up. March 4th at the Westfield, there we go, Westfield YWCA, March 4th from 6 to 8:30 p.m. We're going to have some training. They have a goal, as you saw from last week's show, of training 5,000 people on being stewards of children. And it's $10 because it's $10 for the workbook. And the Westfield Mayville Rotary Club will be sponsoring it as far as refreshments and providing the training room there and so forth. I encourage all of you to be there if you possibly can. It's good for our community. It makes kids safe and helps us to be good stewards of children, as it's called. We keep an eye on our kids. I will personally be there, and I would love to see all of you there and talk with you and so forth. Okay, what else we got here? I want to give a shout out to a colleague of mine, Pat Christina. I ran into her this week, and Pat has gone through a bout of some illness, some medical issues, but she's overcome them, and man, she looks great, and she watches the show, and she actually likes it. So thanks, Pat. Good to see you, and glad that you're tuning in every week. For those of you that watch us on YouTube, I calculated the other day, we're somewhere close to 2,000 views on the shows since July, so we know that people are enjoying the show, and hopefully the things that we've been providing are really important to you all. I want to remind you that if you have a question for me, an announcement, a question for our guests, something you want to share, a birthday, anniversary, an event for your organization, you can contact us through all these various means, through Twitter, there it is. This is just like the telethon here. Your Facebook, there's the address there. You can call us at 753-5225 and 5225, and a very warm and caring individual will answer the phone and take your call. If you're shy to ask a question, you can leave a question and they'll get the questions to me through a variety of technological means. We are very high tech here. Okay, let's see what else we got here. A couple things I wanted to share with you. Last week, I did a fun thing, Barb and I, cabin fever time. I was just talking about, we went to the Erie Kennel Club show, and this is the AKC. Dogs everywhere. It was unbelievably great. They had the best of breed, and then they had the best of group, and then the best of show. And it was just like watching a small version of Westminster Dog Show, if you ever watched that. And we saw some of Max's cousins there. The bearded collies were just unbelievable. You haven't lived, or you're sitting in a chair and an Irish wolfhound walks by, and they're taller than you are sitting. It's just incredible. So anyways, just encourage you to keep an eye open for those kinds of things. For a few bucks, you can go there and have a great time. Okay, my dad I was talking the other day up in Buffalo, and he says, "You're never going to believe this, John." I go, "What?" And he's reading this letter that he got from New York State, and congratulated on the fact that the city of Buffalo must have kept their tax rate below 2%. And I thought, okay. So he says, and guess what? He said, because they did that, he got a check in the mail. Now, I love it when people get money back, but I want you to think about this just for a minute. How much does it cost somebody to sit at a desk, to type in the information, to process the check, split it, mail it, post it, whatever you got to do, and all that technology, the data input, all these things? My dad got a whopping check for $2. Postage is almost a fourth of that right off the bat. So I'm not sure about this one. I know I've talked to people who got $11. I think it would make some sense that maybe the state would maybe like have a cutoff of a certain amount of money, but $2. So yesterday we decided how we were going to spend it. So we were just going to put it in the bank and go buy a cup of coffee, I guess. I don't know. It's penny wise, pound foolish on some things. Another thing with the state, okay? A couple weeks ago, I don't know what I was doing. I was walking around the vehicles at home, and I noticed my license plate looked kind of wonky. And I Figured maybe it was just ice built up on it or something like that. I wasn't quite sure. And then Barb said something to me a couple of days ago. She says, do you know they're giving out tickets for certain people with license plates that are damaged and goofed up and stuff? I go, what are you talking about? And she says, yeah, and it's really torqued off a bunch of people, and evidently you got to go to the DMV and take care of all this. Well, anyways, I thought, our license plate doesn't look too good. So sure enough, I went out there, and we have a picture of it. That's my former license plate, folks. There was a batch of license plates that were made, and I'm going to guess 4 or 5 years ago, because the vehicle is, I think, about 4.5 years old. And the paint and the plastic is separating from the actual metal plate, and they were giving out tickets. I don't think they're doing it anymore, but people were getting tickets because they couldn't read the plates because that was coming right off if you went through a car wash or whatever. And the good news is you don't have to pay anything extra. You go down to the DMV with the old plates. Yeah, you let them know what you intend to do, and they give you a little form. It's just real basic information. Have your driver's license, and they give you brand new plates for free. As opposed to when you do your registration, and they give you those options of different color plates, and they charge you extra, whatever, $20-some to get the gold ones, which I don't think are very nice looking. And then you're all set. They give you a new registration card and a registration sticker for your window. So you do have to replace the sticker. But anyways, I would pass it on to you, because if you've got a vehicle that's maybe 4 years old or something like that, check out your plates. It was peeling from the bottom. It was just like it had been sunburned and it was peeling. It was just coming right off. It was really kind of strange, actually. So there's a little piece of information for you. And let's see what else we got. Okay. Want to thank Fredonia Place. They've notified me through my good friend Mike Ferguson that they are going to continue their sponsorship, their underwriting of the show here, and I couldn't be more happy. We do a lot of things here at the studio in this show, and without the support of our underwriters that you see in the beginning of the show, we couldn't do some of the things we do around here. So thank you. And as a little thank you to them, I was asked if I could come over there for an hour right around St. Patrick's Day, and if I could play some music. So I'll be performing at Fredonia Place on March 14th. So if you're out that way or you have some family, I'll be there from 3 to 4. So I'll let you know more about that as time goes by. So anyways, thanks for Fredonia Place for sticking with us. Groundhog Day, a couple days from now. I couldn't believe it. I was looking at the calendar. It's the end of January today. That's it. Tomorrow's 1st of February, and Groundhog Day the next day. And Dunkirk Day, better get it right, because I know a lot of people are ready for some early springtime here. So we'll see about that. And of course, Super Bowl Sunday. Who cares? It's gotten to the point where sports are getting to make people feel like, why are we even bothering with this? I mean, you see all these scandals and these young kids that are getting all this money and doing stupid things. It's really a shame. I used to love football. I used to go to the Buffalo Bills at the old rock quarry in Buffalo and sit up there in the old scorebox with my buddy Jim Hatch and his dad, who used to run all the levers and that sort of thing. And it used to be a lot of fun. It was exciting watching these guys play football. And then we got excited back in the mid-'90s when the Bills went to the Super Bowl. But now, you hear all this stuff and people cheating and threats and people, well, the Hernandez fiasco and all that stuff. It's just sad. So anyways, enjoy the Clydesdale commercials, have some fun with family, make some friendly bets or whatever. We have this tradition of 25 cents a piece and you guess the total score. Have some fun with it, Anyways, may the best team win. I hope it's Seattle. Okay, we're going to take a little break here, and then we're going to get right to our guest. And so this is for you, and we'll be right back.
I remember the moment.
I'll never forget that moment.
That moment?
It was a moment that changed my life. I'd been training with my team for months, and now we had been called up for the first time. The real deal. Wildfires were getting dangerously close to homes. At that moment, I got my first taste of just how important the Guard is to my community.
See how the Guard can be an important part of your life at NationalGuard.com.
And we're back. I'm Doc Hamels. You're watching Chautauqua Sunrise. Remember, if you have a call, if you want to make a call, and you have an event or something you want to share with us, give us a call at 753-5225 and Twitter us and Facebook us and whatever it is you need to get to us. We will share your information. If you're shy, tell the guys, the operator standing by to take your call, and they'll get that information to us. Okay, let's get into the heart of today's show. What I want to do is tell you a little history, okay? And it's a little bit long, so I'm going to try to give you the short version. Chautauqua County has been trying desperately over the last, I'd say, 20 years to find ways to cut costs for the towns and schools, and you've heard the term shared services till you want to run and scream. I personally was involved with at least 3 different barrages of annexation votes and merger votes, and in some cases in the county it failed miserably. There was one success story, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But when these things don't work out, the schools, the kids, the families, the parents, the tax rates, the facilities, the lack of programming is still there. It doesn't go away, and school districts come under great pressure to try these different things, and then you got the no, save our school, and yes, we need better education. No, we can't do this because we bleed our school colors, and we got to do this on the other side, and it just really splits a community just about in half, and it's really a horrible thing to go through, and I personally have done that, and I encourage people, don't take this lightly if you're going to go down this road. Well, anyways, so after a series of these things, and I was on the school board in Ripley, and I was actively involved with a lot of this stuff, for whatever reason, they asked me to be the school superintendent, and it was a great experience for me over in Ripley. But then, as I got to the point where I was thinking about retiring, I had a discussion 1 year before my 55th birthday, and I sat the board down and I said, look, our numbers are dwindling, we're cutting programs, look at the statistics, we don't have lots of little kids coming up through, and we got to do something, because this might be an opportunity for some change in the next year before I retire. Long story short, Bob Bentley, the president of our board at the time, said, okay, I'll call to our neighbors, and we invited all 5 neighboring districts together, and we had a meeting. 4 remained at the table. That was Brockton, Chautauqua Lake, Ripley, and Westfield. And the 5th one went its own way, which is fine. You know, you invite people, not everybody stays for supper. And the 4 schools formed something called the Asset Team, which basically was an organization of schools and leaders and administration to look at options. Now, short story was they came up with a bunch of meetings, they came up with a bunch of options, and over the course of time, each one of the options was explored, and they went through it, and either was shot down, couldn't go through, so forth. Remember what I said. Meanwhile, schools are shrinking, programs are being cut, taxes are going up, pressure from the state, Over time, there was lots of concepts thrown around, like a central high school, and that got shot down. And I said this last week, and I'm pretty darn sure I'm right. Assemblyman Silver in the state assembly was blocking this. He got what he deserved because karma has served its purpose. He's been ousted as leader. I'm hoping that people with a wider vision now in the state assembly will look at education in a different way and help schools have different options than the archaic rules and regulations that are on the table right now. So anyways, long story short, Ripley got creative, and they asked another school to do some things, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to find out what happened from that point in this long history that started with my birthday and moved forward, and here we are about 9 years later from that first discussion I had with my Board of Education. So I want to welcome Ben Spitzer, an old friend of mine, good colleague, and former, I was the former superintendent, and we did a lot of good things together. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning.
So welcome to Chautauqua Sunrise. Pretty cool here,
It
huh?
is awesome.
It is
Great to
awesome
be
here. And we're so pleased that you could come in here and without screaming, and superintendents don't always like to get in front of the camera or on the radio because you sometimes feel kind of like you're always on the defense, but but you're not going to have to be here that way because you're a welcome friend. And my show is here to talk about what's going on and not to tear people down and so forth. So Ben, before we get started, our show goes all over the county.
Yeah.
In fact, it goes around the world. Seriously, because I know that people in Europe watch the show, relatives and friends and so forth. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you were born, that's evident, but somebody gave you birth. And but where you hail from, and a little bit about your own background.
Okay, just real quickly, I mean, I'm an Air Force brat, so as far as where I hail from, it's kind of all over the place. Actually, even spent some time in Taiwan as a little guy.
I did not know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
See, it's something new every day.
Yeah.
But anyway, probably the place I called home was Girard, Pennsylvania, and got my bachelor's degree in speech communications. Then I got a master's degree in educational psychology. Then I went on to get a certification as a school psychologist. I tell everybody I'm a recovering school psychologist right now.
Did you start as a speech pathologist?
No, school psychologist.
No, what was your bachelor's in?
Speech communication. I had this idea that I'd be doing probably what you're doing
Oh,
right
you
now.
mean like TV?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
That's
I
right.
thought you meant like a speech pathologist.
Yeah,
Oh,
no. Obviously didn't pan out. But anyway, and then ironically, I got my first job as a school psychologist in Salamanca, and I lived in Bemis for a little while with my wife and my new daughter, and
As opposed to an old daughter.
that's and that was many moon ago.
Yeah.
But I remember my wife saying someday I would like to live here around the lake, because we ended up moving, and my career took me in different directions. And
Yeah, you were up in Erie County, were you, for a while?
yeah, was assistant principal up there, and then became a principal in Lakeshore for a while, and then came down to Chautauqua Lake, and we're back where we kind of started.
So would you say you had trouble keeping a job?
No,
No, that's the way of life with an educator.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You
it was
have to
about-
kind of move along a little bit with your career.
7 or 8 years in each location.
Yeah,
And,
but you've been in Chautauqua Lake for some time now.
It's my 11th year right now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I can't believe we've known each other that long.
Yeah,
It seems hard to believe.
It's been the best thing that ever happened to me and my
Good.
family.
And you got to live on the lake.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Great. Okay, Ben, I led us up to the point where Ripley had gone through a variety of discussions, and meanwhile Chautauqua Lake and Fredonia, Westfield and Brockton had gone through a variety of shared services, and this whole little asset group had been trying different ideas in
Yeah.
that. So kind of take us where I left the story off with Ripley, looking at hardly any other options and so forth.
Well, I was sitting there thinking about it as you were kind of going through the background, and of course we had quite a run at trying to advocate for regional high school.
Right.
And
Kathy Young was your
yes, and
champion for that.
Senator Young really did a yeoman's job trying to get that through, and it had passed, was unanimously approved by the Senate twice. But I don't think it even saw the light of day in the assembly.
Because the assembly leader wouldn't bring it to the floor.
It never made it to the floor. So
Maybe we have a chance now.
it could be. And ironically, we had a big meeting. We, being the Chautauqua Lake School Board and the Ripley School Board, had a big meeting. Right around the time we were pushing regional high school as an option. We had a big meeting in our auditorium, and I can remember. You mentioned Bob Bentley, the board president. He's still the board president.
Yeah.
And
He picked up where I left off.
yeah, and Bob pretty openly in that meeting said that he wanted to explore options with Chautauqua Lake, even if the regional high school idea wouldn't fly. And that was kind of the birth, if you will, of us getting into some serious discussions about the possibilities of sharing resources and somehow combining. And I don't know if now's the time, but we ended up forging an idea that led to the tuition agreement we now have.
Let me jump in at this. A lot of people don't know this, but the way the rules are, you're not supposed to talk to anybody unless your districts touch. Ralph Wilson, who used to be the superintendent of Clymer years ago, called me up when I was at Ripley, and he said, we should get together and talk. I said, why? He goes, well, because our districts touch, and we could talk about whatever. And I go, we don't touch. And he forgot there was a little strip, I think, of either Westfield or Sherman that separated us. And because he was thinking of the townships touched,
Yeah.
but not the school districts. So you really came up with something creative that really was unheard of, as
Yeah.
far as I can tell.
Well, I think there's a couple of school districts around the state, not many, that are doing some sort of a tuition arrangement.
Right.
But it's been something that's been a little bit of uncharted water. It's not an option. It's an option that's on the books, but it's not an option that many have taken advantage of. So, yeah, the opportunity of tuitioning is there without the necessity to have contiguous borders. So,
Right.
yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, when you say tuitioning, what do you mean? How does that work? How do you tuition somebody that goes from one school to another? I mean,
Yeah, well-
what's the process and all that?
Well, the first thing that needs to happen is the school district that's considering that option needs to put a resolution together, or a referendum for the community to vote on, that specifies the grade levels that will be sent to another school district, and that community, their voters need to approve it, and that's exactly what happened in the situation with Ripley sending their students 7 through 12 to us. But you can specify any grade range that you want, and then assuming that a community supports that notion, then the next thing that happened in our situation was to sit down and develop a contract that outlines some of the core understandings that you need to have in place in order to make that happen. And then from that point forward, it's just a matter of getting those students to the receiving school district and providing them the education.
Now, I remember having the discussion, like I said, with the board, and some of the driving reasons are probably the same reasons why they began to talk about tuitioning. It was not unusual for a physics class, it's hard to say that at 9 o'clock in the morning, had 3 or 4 kids in it.
Yeah.
There weren't enough kids like to have a certain team. There weren't enough kids to fill in certain other programs, and so what was happening, the district kept whittling away at the heart of the programs, and then became basically inefficient.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, all that time trying to do shared things and merge or annex or whatever the case is. So I understand it, maybe the viewers now understand a little bit more why a district like Ripley or whatever school district would want to do something like this, because it's just dying on the vine. Okay? Would that be kind of a fair assessment?
Well, I think the thing that you touched upon that's been kind of the core, even back when we, and you were still sitting in your chair, we were talking about creative ideas like regional high school. The bottom line is, particularly at the 7-12 level, that upper middle grades to the high school range, the challenge is to try to have efficiencies, because as you pointed out, whether it's physics, chemistry, you need to provide the instruction in these courses, and whether you have 3
It's
kids,
mandated.
right?
Yeah, right.
So you can have 3 kids in the room with one teacher, or you can have 13 or 23.
Right.
And that was really the driving force behind the regional high school idea. So the same thing is happening with our tuition situation, in that by virtue of those students in grades 7 through 12 coming to a location where those teachers are providing those required courses, but we're getting some efficiencies now because we've got more kids in the class. So it's beneficial to Chautauqua Lake because we're able to hang on to some of the important programs we have. We have a lot of electives and AP courses and college credit bearing courses that if this hadn't happened, we would probably have had to let go.
So you were sort of getting in the same kind of modality as the small districts were experiencing.
Yeah, declining enrollment is probably the single most serious thing we're battling here in Western New York in terms of our rural school districts, and the challenge isn't just the declining enrollment, but the other challenge is the fact that because we are rural, we're far apart in terms of the location of our schools. So you're trying to find solutions to declining enrollment, at the same time you're battling the reality that we're not so close that we can just blend schools together. So I think that the tuitioning option provide school districts with something to think about, where you can kind of have the best of both worlds. You can hang on to those grade levels where things are, you know, at an efficiency that makes sense, and at points in the school district's demographics where maybe enrollment is low, you can consider sending your students to another location.
So this really benefited both schools.
Absolutely.
It took a school that, for no fault of its own, was shrinking, and this is happening across the state in small schools. It just wasn't a Ripley. I mean, if you look at some of the other school districts, and I'm not going to point any fingers at anybody in particular, but I know at least 2 districts, I believe, are under 500 kids now, total, K-12. And Ripley was in that boat. Chautauqua School District, years ago, before it merged with Mayville and became the now famous Chautauqua Lake School, it was very small at that time. So this is obviously a trend that's continuing. So so then you have a school that's shrinking, and then you have a little bit larger school that is at the brink of maybe make it or break it in some programs. Bring in the school that needs the hand, and now you've made a whole system now.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been very beneficial, and I think, you know, the thing about it is, at the end of the day, it's all about the kids, right? And
tell the parents that come to and argue, they forget that.
yeah,
I remember sitting in one of the community meetings, and it was the same discussion I've heard for the last 20 years. What about the mascot? What about our alumni association? Who's going to play on the football team? Everybody knows when you come from the small school, they're not going to make it on the basketball team.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen statistics to prove that differently lately.
right.
And because whenever I see Chautauqua Lake wins a game or whatever, I go through all the names and go, there's a Ripley kid, there's a Ripley kid, and so forth. So that doesn't hold water. And so a lot of the arguments that people had really are just personal biases, I think, and worries. And they're legitimate.
Sure they are.
We don't take that away. But you can't let that get in the way of what's a good, sound education. And with the pressures that we keep reading about, and I'm not going to talk about core curriculum with you. Lauren and I talk about that here at the show, so we're not going to do that today. But obviously there's pressures that students perform better, learn more, be more competitive when they leave school, and that's not going to happen in schools that are inefficient. Not poor. You got great teachers, but if you don't have the numbers and the people to put in those seats, the efficiency, you're going to pay $40,000 for a teacher, whether there's 3 kids in there that's mandated or there's 20 kids.
Yeah.
And your efficiency goes way up.
Yeah, well, and you know, the thing, I think, again, back to the students, it's a situation where I think sometimes people forget. Kids aren't competing just with other kids in Chautauqua County. They're competing with kids in the other parts of the state, let alone competing with kids in other part of the country and globally. So, you know, we have students downstate who are getting Mandarin Chinese in kindergarten. So, you know, the efficiency piece is important, not just because it's a cost savings, but it's also an opportunity to provide more program, because the resources that are behind those programs now can be used to enhance what's already available, and that's what we're doing at Chautauqua Lake right now.
Let's go back a little bit on the timeline, back to the resolutions.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ripley I remember we voted, Ripley voted, and Chautauqua voted. What basically did the resolution, you referred to it one in general, but what was, and I'm not going to hold you to the specific language, but basically what did it outline?
Well, first of all, just an important distinction is, ironically, the receiving district, so Chautauqua Lake in this example, didn't vote.
Oh, you didn't have to vote?
No, actually.
Oh, all right.
And if my memory serves me correctly, the resolution that was voted on in Ripley primarily specified those grade levels I talked
7,
about,
12.
and the school district in which those kids would be sent to.
But then, as far as the tuition goes, that had to be determined at some point.
Yeah, and that was after the fact. So there was really nothing put together in terms of what the exact cost was until we knew that the community in Ripley had supported the notion of doing this. We've been very fortunate, and by we, I'm saying the Chautauqua Lake School District is very fortunate to have the partnership with Ripley.
Good.
And I think, you know, we're certainly blessed by the fact that we have two boards of education that are very kind of future-oriented and very open-minded and willing to kind
Oh,
of...
please, if there's any way to censor that, Bob Bentley's head will go. It's big enough as it is.
Bob,
He's an old friend of mine.
Yeah, Bob and his
he'll love
colleagues.
this. So, Bob, if you're watching this or hear about it, I still like him. But
Yeah. Well, he deserves a tremendous amount of credit.
Yeah.
As
He's got passion. He can drive.
His colleagues, yeah. Yeah. So, so anyway, you know, we've been, I think we're in our, well, I don't think, we are in our second year of the arrangement right now. And I think, you know, not 100% of those that would weigh in say it's been perfect.
well, you're never going to get that.
No, of course not. But, you know, I will tell you that the lion's share of the people that have given us feedback as to how it's working, it's been remarkable. I mean,
I've heard the same thing
Yeah.
from my end of things.
well, and I think what you talked about when you talked about the adults, you know, and their concerns when it gets into conversations about consolidation or some sort of streamlining of things, the kids figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You know.
I talk to kids and I say, "What do you think about it?" Cool.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, let's do it.
As a matter of fact, I met, I think it was a couple of Fridays ago, with our student administration, as I do a couple times each year, and I sat down with them, and I usually hear the typical kinds of concerns. You know, somebody's going to have issue with the cafeteria food. Somebody's going to talk about the
Oh, yeah.
temperature in the building.
And it's nothing to do with which school's which or where they come from.
Exactly.
It's just kids in general.
Yeah,
I
and-
don't like green hot dogs. I don't like baked macaroni that weighs 300 pounds.
Now, just to be clear, we're not serving green hot dogs, but but that being said, you know, I was interested in their views on how the tuitioning arrangement's going, and the kids really had nothing. Well, actually, I'll say it this way: they didn't have anything to say in terms of concerns or worries or frustrations. So, I was very pleased to meet with that group of student leaders and have them tell me that. For all intents and
I'm
purposes,
assuming
things
there's
are
kids
going
from
good.
both school districts.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
they're
yeah,
good.
yeah. As a matter of fact, on the front end, you know, we did a lot of work to try to, this is after the resolution was approved in Ripley. We rolled our shirt sleeves up and started trying to put together a plan that would allow the transition to be smooth.
That must have been quite an achievement.
Yeah, and it worked. And one of the things we did was we made sure our student administrations in both school districts got together and they kind of weighed in on some concerns and some ideas, and that, along with some other measures we took, really, I think, paved the way for a successful tuition situation.
And I how long is this arrangement for now? Is this forever, ever?
It's a 5-year contract, so we're in the middle of the second year of this 5
So
years.
it's still early. I would suspect probably by the third year, nobody's going to even remember the history of how this all happened because it's going to be just the way it is.
Yeah, you know, when I first arrived at Chautauqua Lake, you know, the Chautauqua Lake merger
Yeah,
was
it was
still
pretty fresh.
in,
Oh,
in
absolutely.
people's mind.
Yeah.
And today, you know, the topic really doesn't come up as an issue, whether it's from the staff or the community or the kids. So, you know, time kind of takes care of a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And I think in the instance of us having our students from Ripley come over, probably, as you say, by next year it'll be a distant memory as far as how we got here, and it'll just be the way things are.
You know, while we were talking, I got a couple questions that were twittered to me.
Yep.
And let's see if I can roll them into one big question. It talks about programs and more opportunities. So one of the questions was about distance learning. Have you opened that up any at all? And what other kinds of opportunities have come along because of this, if any?
Well, let me talk about distance learning. We had distance learning before we, you know, entered into this arrangement with Ripley.
Let's tell the folks what distance learning is.
Yeah.
Maybe I always try to be careful in that. Distance learning is an arrangement through BOCES, right?
Yep.
Where you have students that maybe, let's make something up, want to take Japanese, okay? So they are sitting in front of a TV screen or a pull-down screen, and there's a live two-way interaction with cameras and microphones and that sort of thing, and there's an instructor off-site, maybe somewhere else in the whole United States or the world, doesn't matter anymore, with the technology we have today, and the students learn that language through distance learning, through the technology.
Right.
How's that for a quick
That's pretty good.
Okay, so you were going to continue on.
Well, I was just going to say that we did have distance learning before we got into the arrangement with Ripley, and we certainly are continuing with it as we now have our partners from Ripley join us. But the challenge with distance learning, frankly, is the scheduling, because as you kind of outlined, it's an opportunity for one school district perhaps to host the class.
Right.
So they'll be working with their students in their distance learning classroom in whatever school
Different
district.
bell schedules.
Yeah, and bell schedules never line up perfectly. We worked a number of years ago to try to have some wiggle room where we could at least more efficiently have opportunities for kids to take courses that other school districts are offering. But at the end of the day, in terms of distance learning somehow directly related to our tuition arrangement with Ripley, probably not so much, other than the fact that because Chautauqua Lake did have the Ripley students come in, as I said, we were able to not only preserve our programs that we had, we were fortunate enough to be able to add a couple of programs.
Like what? That was the other part of that question.
Okay, we added Mandarin Chinese. So,
you're serious?
Yeah, and that's through distance learning. So,
I just made that up.
yeah, and I had always wanted to have Mandarin Chinese, and our Board of Education was very interested in trying to find an opportunity to introduce that language to our students prior to our arrangement with Ripley. And once we struck the arrangement, we were dedicated to trying to find some opportunities for all of the kids that would be over and above something that they had prior, and Mandarin Chinese is one of the things we added. I will say too, since we're talking about programs and what was added, it's been really a benefit to all the kids in both school districts, in that by getting our arrangement put together, we were able to add some things that Ripley had offered that Chautauqua Lake had not.
So a nice compromise there. Huh?
Yeah, we have bell choir now, handbell.
It makes I get shivers when I think about the bell choir, because I was part of the beginning of that whole process.
Yeah, and we added a trap club that we didn't have before, that Ripley was
Jim
involved
Wakeman,
with.
that was his baby.
Yeah,
Tom Kelly.
So it's been a very much a two-way street in terms of all the kids benefiting and new programs being either added or held on to.
Okay, well, catch your breath.
Okay.
You're watching Chautauqua Sunrise. I'm Doc Hamels with my guest, Ben Spitzer, the superintendent of Chautauqua Lake Central School, and we've got a phone call.
Oh.
So, good morning, caller.
Good morning, Ben. Good to hear you on TV. You've been talking about the Ripley Chautauqua Lake merger. How many kids, students from Ripley, are now attending Chautauqua Lake?
The number that we started with when we put together the agreement and worked out the tuition costs was 130 students. So we have more than that right now. I don't have the exact number. Frankly, it kind of varies, not day to day, but certainly month to month, depending on whether kids move or whatever. But we're probably somewhere between 135, 140 students.
Okay, and the chance of merging the elementaries, is that in the future? I mean, it seems like to actually close Ripley School would be beneficial now that you are already taking students.
Yeah, well, as a little bit, first of all and foremost, it's probably not my place to weigh in as to what the Ripley community might think now or in the future. There are challenges when you do tuitioning arrangements, whether it be our situation or any other schools in the state. One of the things that you have to look at is your available space. So, the thing I was going to say about Doc and I talking earlier is at the secondary level, 712 or 912, you're dealing with some real challenges because you have these required courses like we talked about, physics and chemistry, and whether you have only a couple of kids that need that or a bunch, you got to provide it. At the elementary level, it's a little easier to right size your situation because your teachers are certified basically kindergarten to 6th grade, and so you really just look at your enrollment and then you determine what class size you want, and then you can have an economy of scale there where you've got X number of teachers to X number of students. So I'll just be straightforward and tell you, we haven't talked about any kind of a tuition arrangement with elementary at this point in time. And I think, frankly, a lot of moms and dads like the idea of having their little ones kind of close to home. So as long as it can be efficient in terms of those numbers I talked about, teachers, the ratio of teachers to students, as long as that can be managed, if you can keep the kids close at home, it probably makes sense. And actually, that's something I'm hoping John will give me an opportunity to talk about, which is an idea that our school district and Ripley has joined on board. We're advocating for, which is tuition incentive aid.
Let me just weigh in on the elementary caller. Is traditionally, even in merged districts, if there's multiple sites for elementary, very often, especially if they're in two different villages or townships in a merged district now, they'll leave the elementary schools right where they are.
Okay.
That's usually a kiss of death, and it's good for kids. That's what this is all about, from what I can tell, is what's good for kids.
Okay, and I'm going to let you go. Just one last question. Ripley seems a long way from Mayville. Is it an awful long bus ride? I mean, I hated buses when I was in school. It just seems like
buses are much more nicer now.
I mean, they have to go around and pick you up, and then they have to either, I don't know if they go to the school and merge, or if they all just come right to Chautauqua Lake.
That's a good question.
It just seems like a long way. Well, I'll let you guys get back to your show.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for calling, and thank you for pointing out probably the single biggest challenge for us that we're still kind of battling. I mean, I think we have it by and large figured out, but the truth of the matter is the transportation is a challenge. If I'm not mistaken, if you go down to the light at the bottom of the hill in Westfield, there used to be a sign that would kind of show you 7-8 miles to Brockton, 7-8 miles to Ripley, and 7-8 miles up the hill to Mayville. And so, and I remember that because that was something we were looking at when we were talking about regional high school. But your point is well taken, and it touches on the challenge that I was alluding to earlier in terms of knowing that you have some challenges with efficiency, but also understanding that you have challenges with distance. Chautauqua Lake School District is around 102 square miles. I believe, because I actually double-checked this, that Ripley proper, and I'm not sure about the school district, but I think Ripley's just under about 50 square miles.
Yeah, I think it's around there.
Yeah, so you're dealing with a lot of territory there, and so you got to pick all those kids up, and then you got to get them to a location, and what they do, I believe, is pick the kids up, and they put them on a bus, and they send them up the hill. But it's still, I believe, under an hour, and that's what we all try to do. I think the standard right now is try not to have kids on the bus longer than an hour, which is a long time.
But the other thing, too, is, if I recall, is that Ripley was sending kids to the Hughes Center. They were sending children to your special education programs anyways. Yeah. So the buses were going right by there. This wasn't like they had to do a total different route. Now it was just moving more bodies to another location.
Yeah,
so
you're 1100% right.
So God bless the head bus drivers and their and their crew.
Tough job.
It's a tough job. I got another question that popped up, Ben, and I'm going to try to ask it the best way I understand. We get these things twittered to us.
Yeah.
All right. I think they're comparing tuitioning where Ripley would, any district would send to another district, and the tuition that a family would pay if they paid tuition. Those are two different cats altogether, right?
Well, not really, because each school district each year, first of all, it's up to the school board. They could make a determination they don't want to accept tuition students.
Oh, okay.
I believe there's a couple of school districts even in the county that maybe take that position. Now, if you don't accept any students, then you don't have to have an established tuition rate.
Okay.
But if the school district decides that they'll open their doors to tuition students, then in our instance, what we do is we have a board resolution that says this is how much it's going to be for a student in grades 7-12, and this is how much it's going to be for an elementary student, and then we have a preschool program, so we have a separate rate there. But that rate needs to be the same rate that so we have our tuition rate is $7,219 per student. That's not just a rate that's for Ripley. If an individual parent, for instance, wanted to have their...
That was the question,
Yeah,
I guess.
that's
Okay.
it. Same thing.
Okay, very good. We have another phone call. You ready?
Yeah.
Good morning, caller.
Oh, good morning. This
Hey,
is Linda.
Linda. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you, Doc? It's so good to see you.
Thank you.
on
Good
the
to be
show.
seen.
Now that you're talking about tuition rates, I just thought of a question.
Okay, shoot.
What the board decides on, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that based on any state allocation per student?
Well, actually, what happens, first of all, the Board of Education can establish a rate that they decide is a fair rate. They could, I suppose, even decide that they're not going to establish a rate. There's something called...
Seneca Falls?
Yeah, the Seneca Falls formula, which is...
Pull that right out of there.
The State Education Department will put out an established tuition rate for those grade ranges that I talked about, and I keep looking at that speaker as a person. But anyway,
Linda, you're on the wall.
so they'll put out a rate and say this is your non-resident tuition rate. The irony with that is it's always looking in the rear view mirror. So they kind of use old data to tell you what you should be charging. Now, when I say they tell you what you should be charging, that's the maximum amount of money that you would be permitted to charge. And again, some school districts may choose to deviate from that one way or another. We were in a bit of a pickle when we were trying to put this together, in that we had to look forward instead of looking back at what our non-resident tuition rate
make it
is.
a realistic number.
Yeah, we had to kind of predict, and fortunately for us, we came in very close to what the non-resident tuition rate is as it stands right now. But I don't know if that helps or not.
Well, thank you. It did help. It's very interesting.
Yes, thank you.
So, Lynn, anything to share, or is that it?
Well, I'd just like to announce that there are services with the Chautauqua County Office for the Aging, and also the Senior Employment Program, and the free computer training that we have in Westfield, Brockton, Dunkirk, and Jamestown.
And the number you call?
The number is, general number, 753-4471.
And we have that up on the screen for you as well.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you staying warm, I hope.
Oh, I am. I'm not looking forward to the frigid Sunday night and Monday night stuff.
2 below, I think I saw, and it's probably colder up here.
But it still isn't as harsh as last winter yet.
Amen. I got you on that one. That was horrible last year. Okay, then you take care. Thanks for calling.
You too. Thanks. Have a great...
Okay. All right. Well, while we're talking about all kinds of things, and give Ben a little breath here. February 28th, right here at the studio, we're going to have an open house. It will be the recognition celebration of live Saturday morning programming, the 1,000th show. Wow. The senior report, and then merging into the spin-off of Chautauqua Sunrise. So if you're interested, basically, the guys are prepared to have a little open house, let you view the programming here. We'll have limited seating in the studio, just like a live audience. You gotta be good during my show. And so if you're interested, you can give us a call here at the studio or show up. We'll be talking more about this the next couple of weeks. But Chris tells me that he'd like to have it open from 8:30 to 11:30. So pre-show, post, or during the show and post-show, and you can come for any part of that. So February 28th here, right at Access 5, open house, celebrating our 1,000th, that's hard to say, live Saturday morning show. Ben, I do want to get to this because we only got 5 minutes and 8 seconds left. I told you it was going to go quick.
It does go quick.
Okay. The question is, or where I want to go with this is, the newspapers and the media have made you and Ripley the poster children of the way to do business in the 21st century. But you're doing it on the backs of the school and the taxpayers without any state help, really. I mean, the state gives us state aid, but if you were to do a merger millions of dollars were coming through. There's no money like that coming through, right?
Right.
So I mean, virtually, you've kind of done like a quasi blending here.
Yes.
So you wanted me to ask the question about incentive aid programming in the state. So what's this all about?
I'm appreciative of you giving me the.
I'm glad
opening
that
the
commercial.
door
I
for
appreciate that you appreciate me. All right, 4 minutes and 14 seconds. Go.
All right. So here's the idea. I think, as I said earlier, the agreement between Chautauqua Lake and Ripley is a 5-year agreement. So we'll be revisiting that at some point down the road. And by virtue of saying that, what I'm actually saying is, it's not a permanent situation.
Right.
And there's pros and cons to that. Our school board and the Ripley School Board has been thinking a lot about a lot of untapped reorganization aid. There's a certain amount of aid
Just sitting there.
that's just sitting there and allegedly available for school districts to take advantage of if they were to quote unquote merge. And we know from a number of scenarios around our county that let alone the state, that's just not happening for a variety of very good reasons perhaps. So our suggestion to our legislators and to the governor would be, consider taking that same amount of money that's available for mergers and somehow make it available proportionally for any receiving and sending school district for these tuition arrangements. And the nice thing about it, in our judgment, is the fact that it's not an all or nothing scenario. You could have a school district choose to send 7-12 to another school. You could have a school district choose to send 9-12, or perhaps they only want to send, 11th and 12th.
Flexibility and creativity.
Lots of flexibility, and what we would say is, look, make some of this money available for the school district that's willing to take the plunge and send their students perhaps to a school district where there's more program, and then some of that money go to the school districts that are going to take these kids in to make sure that those programs are vibrant and sustainable. So we're trying to, and I appreciate again that you gave me the opportunity to talk about it, because we're trying to get some traction and interest in this idea to promote it to our legislators.
How can the viewers support this if they're interested?
Well, I think the first thing that I would ask that they do is send, we have a contact us button at our website, which is www.clake.org. And if they would want to click on that contact us website and just send in some sort of supportive email comment with their name and contact information, we're going to start collecting that and put it together perhaps in some format that we can take to our legislators and say, look, our communities are supportive of this. And I frankly can't see why either of our two school districts would not support it, because we're already involved.
Right.
Sealake.org. Sealake.org, yes. And I've been talking a lot about this, because if you start letting your mind expand in terms of possibilities, you really could have even magnet schools, which have been talked about in our county. You could have a school of math, science, and technology. You could have a school of fine arts, and you could have school districts agreeing by virtue of those votes that they were going to tuition kids to those kinds of schools.
All right, Ben, we're winding down here. I do want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your passion for kids and school districts. You've been watching Chautauqua Sunrise. I'm Doc Hamels. Ben, before we go off the air, I got an important question for you.
Yes, sir.
All right. What's your call on the Super Bowl?
Well, I was talking to my wife last night about that, and we both think there's going to be a safety involved in this football game. I think the last two Super Bowls there's been a safety. So factoring in the safety, I'm calling it 23-14 Seattle.
All right, I like your spirit. Folks, if you want to know more about what Ben's been talking about, go to sealake.org, and there's information out there. Support this concept, because it's coming to Chautauqua Lake one way or the other. Thanks again, Ben, for coming to the show. I want to thank all of you for watching here. We're going to be live here Saturday morning next week. So take care, stay warm. I'm Doc Hamels, and we'll do it all again next Saturday. Be well.